All right. So thank you for the introduction, and thank you for having us. This is really exciting. And yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about, so we actually broke our session into 2 sessions today. So we have this talk right now, and then we have a more workshop moment later in the day. So we're going to walk through a couple case studies and everything as we go through this. But just, I guess let's just kick it off.
Yeah.
So we can't bring the microphones behind. Okay, this is going to be great. So we called our talk "Building Government for Humans First," and as Billy mentioned, I'm Emily. This is Lauren. Oh, it's still there. Okay, I think it just looks like it's gone if I back up. So this is me. I am a user experience designer. So I've been, I would say I got started in startups in San Francisco working on cool tech products. And then at some point I did a fellowship with Code for America in 2012 and traveled to the city of Austin and built products inside the city with a team of 3 people. And it was really amazing. It was a really cool experience. It was really frustrating. It was incredibly hard. We made very little progress compared to what I thought we would do going in, but it was meaningful, and a lot of the products that I worked on there are still going now. So that's really cool to see. Then I went back into private sector. I worked at a few different startups and did really cool things, but got really bored because it didn't feel like it meant quite as much as the work that I had been doing. And then I was lucky enough to get the opportunity to join on at the United States Digital Service to start a team at the Department of Veterans Affairs, which at that time was having a few problems that you may have seen in the news about claims processing and other things. So that was really an exciting opportunity. Again, very difficult and very challenging, but very worthwhile. Since then, I've continued on working with cities and states to help build better products that are focused on the people that are using them and the people that administer them from the state and city side.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Can you guys hear us? Is this all right? Level? Great. So my name is Lauren Lockwood. You gave a great intro, Billy. Thank you. I spent several years standing up a digital service team at the city of Boston and encountered a lot of issues. I'm sure that you guys are all very familiar with trying to do, implement changes within government and especially with respect to large IT projects. And when I was there, and I think we've both had this experience working in government, what I had wanted while I was there was not vendors who were going to come fix a problem we had, but really a vendor who was going to be a partner with us in helping us get better and build that capability in-house to do transformation for ourselves. And so we sort of founded Bloom after I left Boston because we really wanted that sort of sense of partnership rather than being treated as sort of a client. We wanted a partner. And so basically that's what we do now. We pair with different state and local governments and work on different digital service projects in collaboration with state and local governments to help them sort of develop in-house confidence and capabilities for delivering better digital services. So we're going to talk a little bit about a few different case studies, as Emily mentioned, but I think just to kick things off, we wanted to just see a show of hands. How many of you have worked on an IT project that went past the launch date that you had originally planned? Can you see a show of hands?
Keep them up.
Keep them up. Keep them up. Now, how many of you have been part of an IT project that went past the budget you expected? Lots of hands. Okay, you're not alone, which is the great news. That's the good side. It's also some awful news. 94% of large IT projects in government fail, and that means they go over time and over budget, or over budget. And perhaps even a more startling stat is that 41% of those large projects are abandoned altogether or completely redone. That should give everybody pause. These are astounding figures. I think they're large is defined as being over $10 million. So these are very, it's a big problem. And so what we wanted to talk, actually maybe you want to talk a little bit about what we want to talk about today. It's really, we wanted to set this up as, there are problems with the process right now that we have in government for producing large, or sort of implementing large IT projects, and we wanted to walk through a few different case studies on ways of coming up with more successful outcomes that we've been part of.
Yeah, so the talk before this from Red Hat was a great opener for this. I think one of the things that we saw at USDS and that Lauren also experienced in Boston was that if you approach a problem by first discovering the whole ecosystem around it and what you're actually trying to solve, you can actually save a lot of this headache later. So the way that, what we're going to talk about today is like an approach we have called discovery, where we spend a set amount of weeks sort of understanding why you're doing what you're doing, what exists around it, what also is happening next to it, who the users are, what they're needing, who the internal users are, what they need. And you just take time to really assess the situation that you're coming into and build the right thing. So we have 2 case studies where we approached a problem and we felt like it was successful. So we're going to talk, some elements of it at least were very successful, so we're going to talk about that. And then if you want to stick around for our workshop afterwards, we have some worksheets and some ways that we approach these problems, and we can get more into the details if you are interested in doing that.
Awesome. So so as Emily said, some of these, what we're going to do is talk through some of these case studies and then sort of talk about some of the takeaways from them. Because as Emily mentioned, some of the things worked and some of them didn't work, just like any project. We learned a lot from that, and so the workshop will be more of sort of the tactical side of this, like how you would actually apply this to your projects. And so, one I wanted to mention was probably our most visible project in Boston was redesigning Boston.gov, which Billy mentioned. When I joined, the mandate was we need a new website. So just like so many government websites, it was outdated, it looked really ugly, but nobody was asking the question, why does a city government have a website? And in fact, over drinks one night, a friend of mine who does not work in government at all had asked me that question, and I was like sort of taken aback by it. It's sort of one of those things where you just assume the need, but it was a good starting point. And I think it helps to level set sometimes on what is the job of a city government website or a state government website, and start from there. So our team actually started by building a mission for the work that we were going to be doing. At the time we were 3 people, including me. So this was not some large digital service team that we'd built, but we decided that we were there to design digital services around the needs of our constituents. And so to be true to that mission, we started this website redesign project not by issuing an RFP, but by leaving City Hall. So we started by talking to users. And they told us a number of things. I know you're not going to be able to read some of this, but some of the really powerful things that they said that really stuck with us were things like, the website feels as if the city unlocked its filing cabinet and said, there it is, it's there for you. Or it's exactly what you'd expect of a government website. Or perhaps this one also, which was really interesting, was I don't want to know if it's the weather for the whole city. I just want to know if it's going to rain on me today. And so there was a lot loaded in those comments from users that really helped guide the work we did. So what we did was basically took a lot of those conversations we had with, when I say users, I mean constituents in Boston of all stripes, and then basically people in-house too, because we recognized that the city staff was also a main user group. So what we did was we took that feedback and we distilled it into some guiding principles that really guided the website project and all of the work we've done. So the first was to act as a helpful human. And that might seem obvious, but it really, it was an important principle for us to remind us to be simple and direct in our communication and never sort of authoritative and condescending. The second was to be equal parts warm and official. And this was a really important one because we discovered that there was a lot of tension between whether you could be friendly and neighborly or, but at the same time official, and people treated it as as an or. You could be one or the other, but not both. And so that was going to be an important bridge for us to be a connector. The third was to help users navigate their portion of a very complex system. So as government officials, we felt like we had some really important knowledge of the inner workings of government, and our job was really to be sort of a Sherpa for constituents. And then the last, which was really interesting, was to build an energizing environment. And that was our way of sort of distilling a lot of the feedback we got around how people told us that it feels like a lot of times with government, they're knocking and no one's home. And that for us was a really powerful message in terms of, if we build a great looking website, it's not going to matter if people don't feel like we're responding to their needs and changing things as we need to sort of adapt to their changing needs. So what we did was actually started by filling some of our talent gaps in-house. We went from a team of 3 to a team of 7. We hired our first developer, which was great for a website team. We brought on board a designer, a developer, a product manager, and a content specialist. And I would just say that, for so many government groups, you're hamstrung a lot of times in terms of your ability to just go hire new people. I get that. We had to be really creative, but also what we did was we found out it's not illegal to invite members of the community who are experts on a thing to review an RFP or to review the responses from vendors that you're getting to sort of make sure that they make sense. And we got some incredibly valuable feedback from doing that. So we did have a lot of success augmenting our own team with a board of advisors. So this is what we did. Importantly, we developed in the open, and something that, that really resonated out of Jim's conversation with you just now is, we developed in the open. We didn't go behind closed doors, build a new website and say, ta-da, here it is. We started by launching a pilot 4 months after we started the project. So it was not to replace all of boston.gov. It was mostly to introduce a few different concepts that we wanted to try out. And so it was sort of a safe space to start ideating and inventing new ideas, because it was not a threat to the overall website yet. It was just like an idea place. So basically, we iterated on that. We launched the project in August 2015, and that was when we sort of started meeting with users that I talked about. We launched our pilot in January, so just 4 months later. We spent the spring, basically in 2 week sprints, adding to that beta website, to that pilot website, until the point where it had all the same content on it as the old website, and then we simply redirected the old site to the new one, and that was the launch. And so you can see it sort of massively de-risked the launch of a new website by doing that. So to speak to some of the things that we changed, obviously design, and I think the important thing here was that it's not just to have an updated look and feel. Design is important for conveying so many things. So one important thing was using things like fonts I mentioned being equal parts warm and official. We use sort of a cursive-y font throughout the website that sort of has a friendlier tone, but then at the same time, we paired it with a sort of blocky Montserrat font that is very sort of bold and authoritative. And so you can feel that interplay even in the colors and the fonts. The next was we changed the organization of content. So rather than organizing it as, Parks Department and parking and transportation, we simply said, what are the main things that users are coming to the website to do? And so we picked out some of those major themes and we created guides. So we have content organized by things like having a car in the city, and it's things like parking and getting your resident permit or parking permits and things like that. So it really spans across a lot of different departments. The next was language and tone. So we found that across the website, there were many sections that were at a postgraduate reading level. So we brought that down to an 8th grade. There were a lot of things that we did to make the information itself a lot more accessible for people. And then lastly, we obviously upgraded the technology. So we used Drupal, which I think a lot of you are familiar with, and which allowed us to open source the full website on GitHub, which has been really important for a lot of reasons. It has been a huge driver for allowing the city to attract new developers to work on the website, but also allows us to more effectively partner with outside organizations like universities or school groups who want to contribute something to the website. So that has also been a huge benefit. And so I will just close by saying on that case study that, if you look back at those sort of guiding principles, act as a helpful human, be equal parts warm and official, help people navigate their portion of a complex system, and ultimately being able to build that energizing environment. We used all of those principles through the design, technology, and the language and tone to really change the way that we built that website so that it sort of more effectively met the needs of those end constituents than it would have, I strongly believe, if we had started with that RFP day one and gone straight into requirements gathering.
Awesome. So I'm going to tell you about a different project at the Department of Veterans Affairs. It is also a website. But I'm actually going to tell you about one smaller piece of the website so that we get a little more variety here. So the Veteran Online Application for Healthcare was a project that we launched in 2016 at the VA. But backing up to how we decided to work on that in particular, so my team landed in the VA in 2005. There were 6 of us. We had 3 major project initiatives. They were all very healthy in scope. And so one of the things as I started to, as you can see here, the VA provides a lot of services to veterans. So unlike many other federal agencies, we are a lot of things to a specific group of people, or were. They are still. So how to prioritize a lot of these services and how we sort of modernize or rebuild was no small task. Go ahead. So the project that I was working on for most of that time was building a single unified digital experience for all veterans. I had no idea what that meant when I got there. And so we part of our goal was to define what that in fact meant. And to us it meant taking 1,000 websites, or 1,000 websites, 1,000 call center, or 42 call centers, 1,000 1-800 numbers. They had so many services. So a lot of that was saying, okay, veteran, it is not your job to go back and forth to every one of these different call center numbers and every one of these, I'm so happy you're nodding back there. Yeah, to every one of these websites, and it is our job to take them all and put them together so you can come to us with your question or with whatever you need, and you can solve for that thing without having to get passed around between websites. We also spent a lot of time on things like Lauren just talked about, on voice and tone, on plain language, on limited iconography and imagery. One of the first things we heard before we started was, stop showing me American flags. I feel complicated about my service, so if you open up a website full of American flags, that's a lot of feelings for me. Don't tell me I feel proud, just give me health insurance, right? So that's a good example of kind of where we were starting. We just started super basic. I was coming from a much smaller organization, and then I landed at the VA, which is it's like 500,000 people work at the VA, not to talk about how many people we actually served. This is Frankie. Frankie is a systems diagram for VBMS, which is the claims processing system. I'm about to talk about healthcare for a little while, but this system, we printed it and it was on our wall in a giant 5-foot poster. And you can spend a lot of time looking at this and partly scratching your head and wondering why, partly in awe of how did we make such complexity. But in particular, showing up at the VA with the 6 of us and trying to reorient and build a product from the veteran up rather than from the VA down to the veteran. So I spent lots of time my first few months sitting with a rating veteran service representative, that's what VSR stands for, as they process claims. And their job felt like this many arrows, it felt like this at their desk. They were using that many systems all the time, trying to make progress on behalf of veterans. And then if you go to the next one, over here is an actual veteran. So you can imagine what it felt like for the employee to know this is who I'm serving, obviously, 10,000 systems away, and also for a veteran to know how to interface with this big of a process. So this is kind of where we landed into this situation where we had to sort of stop thinking about the system and start thinking about the actual person that we were serving and their family and their caregivers. So we did a bunch of research to figure out where to start, and this is sort of what we're going to talk about with Discovery. This was a combination of looking at analytics, an interdisciplinary team that's trying to figure out exactly where we can really have the most leverage and where we can make the most impact in the quickest amount of time. A lot of our projects were sort of based on, we need to prove that this vets.gov thing is a good idea, and that we're not just one more website. We're not website number 1001. So we decided we wanted to get something that we could move on quickly, that would provide real value, that we weren't going to get a ton of pushback in. So what we were actually going to do was we were going to create a page that had very clear language around how you apply for healthcare. And it was going to lead you to this form called the 1010EZ. And we were like, well, we won't redesign the form just yet, but we have a hunch that people can't find this form. And so we're going to make it easier for them to find and access, and then we're going to see what happens next. We can do that in less than a week. It shouldn't be too difficult. Let's just do it. Okay, so this, I took this picture at a homeless shelter that was, this was like up on their whiteboard. It had been rained on many times. And this was how you register for health care at the VA. So I tried this, and I thought it was a little silly, and then like it looked really complicated. And then I tried it, and I tried for a long time this link that I was building the page for. I was like, great, we're gonna get this page out. I found the link. Every time I clicked on this link, I got this page. It downloaded a file to my computer, and it said, the document you are trying to load requires Adobe 8 or higher. Please go reconfigure and update, which that's all the information. And I'm generally pretty good at computering and Googling, and this was as far as I made it every time. So back up a little bit to our team that's sort of full speed ahead. 73% of veterans apply in person for healthcare. That is, they walk in and they fill out an application. 13% apply by mail, and less than 10% were applying online. This was the reason the VA told us this wasn't a high priority. They said it's working fine, people just don't want to apply online. So then we asked why a lot to a lot of people, and they were not happy about it. Some of them were, some of them weren't. And we basically said, well, why are so few people applying online? They said, I don't know. I said, well, what's happening to the forms? It's like, we're not getting that many submissions, so they must not be applying. We said, well, we think they're getting this PDF and they can't actually get to the form. They said, no, we did usability testing. It works. They're doing it wrong. So we said, well, how are you doing usability testing? And they said, well, we open our computer, we have somebody remote in, and they fill out the form remotely on our computer, and we see how they can do it. And enter a long rant about the difference between usability testing and acceptance testing. They're different but similar. But we'll skip that rant. And we kept asking why. We kept saying, look, we think that there's a problem here and we need to find it. More people should be applying for healthcare online. So we were having trouble making headway because as far as the VA was concerned, this wasn't broken, and they had many things that were broken, and they said, we'd rather you work on the things that are broken. So I don't think that we can play this video right now, but if you come to our workshop, you can listen to it. I'm gonna tell you what it says. I'm gonna sort of just describe it to you. Have you seen this video? No, okay. So we went to a library and we sat down with people who wanted to apply for healthcare. Or we sat down with veterans who had applied for many things at the VA, and we said, will you just tell us how you apply for healthcare? So this is a video of a really wonderful gentleman sitting down at a computer trying to apply for healthcare. He basically goes through, has to click on some stuff, has to accept like that red banner that's like, this is unsafe, and he has to go through there, and then he eventually lands at that PDF, to which he responds, this is where I always end up. This is so frustrating. This is as far as I've gotten. I've been trying to apply for healthcare for, I think it's 5 years, he says. And I can't make it past this. And we said, well, what do you do when you can't make it work? He says, once I went to the library and I actually got to the form. And then I filled out half of it, but my session termed out or something like that. And he's frustrated, and so frustrated that he's like, at this point, accepted that this is just his plight in life, is to try and apply for healthcare at the VA. And it's kind of entertaining. So then we show him our new form. We built a prototype. It didn't work yet, but you could kind of click around and fill things out. So the next video is him using the prototype and saying, I've never experienced something so easy at the VA. This seems impossible. Everything else feels like you're sending me out a back door through a field of IEDs, I think is something that he says. So moving on. We actually had pushback every step of the way until we got that video. And it's just like a minute-long video of a guy. And we sent that via email to a lot of the leadership of the VA. We were like, this is what's happening. This is why it's only 10%. Like, it needs to be more. And they watched the video. The undersecretary watched the video. It was that day he responded, and he was like, let's get that man health care, and also let's fix the form. So I think that guy got a call from the undersecretary like that day. And then we continued on with vets.gov. This is it now. This is, so now it's actually va.gov, which is a really cool thing. We thought we were just building this site that could sort of help you get through a lot of the like track, manage, apply processes. And then it turned out we were doing something right, and the rest of the VA's websites needed some more help. So we actually consolidated everything into vets.gov, and it's now va.gov. But then if you continue one more, this is the healthcare application. It's not flashy, but hey, it works. So in the past, there were 62 applications submitted online per day. After we did this form, there were over 500 a day. So for the healthcare application, there's been at least 424,000 submitted. So that's one of the happiest numbers that I've ever worked on. And it's just really cool to see that. And I think back to a lot of like the team's approach, and kind of just to bring this back to discovery. It's like if you set out to solve a problem and you have this idea that you know everything else that's going on other than the problem that you're solving, you might not actually solve anything because you're not taking into account the rest of the ecosystem that's going on. So this was something our team constantly found, is that we would set up to solve a small thing, and sometimes it wasn't even a technology problem, and sometimes it was, but it was like 10 more technology problems, and we just were like, well, we can't just solve this one. We have to start at the root problem over here. Yeah.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so these might just seem like two meandering stories that had, we talked about a lot of the good outcomes from them. I mean, obviously, if we're, having a beer, we can talk about all the things that didn't go slide-worthy about them. But there were a number of takeaways from them that are pretty consistent across a lot of the projects we've been involved in. So we thought we'd just kind of talk through some of those. The main one that sticks out, that has stood out for me a lot, is that there's a really big difference between making something nominally available and then making it truly accessible. And so to that point about, it feels like you just kind of opened up the filing cabinet. Well, that's not enough. It is our job to make things, as Emily said, accessible to them and sort of help people navigate what the complexities, that scary looking Frankie diagram.
Yeah, I mean, and the same for the VA. I mean, I think like that healthcare online application was technically accessible if you had Internet Explorer 8 and Adobe Acrobat 9. That was the magic combination. But if you did not have that system, you could not access that form. No service lives in isolation, so kind of just what I was saying, like no product that you're going to build is going to exist as if you were a startup and you just like came up and made something out of nothing. It has to fit within everything else that you're doing, and so if everything else that you're doing, if you can't rebuild all of it, then you need to figure out a way to make it play nice with everything that you're already doing. And
I would just, to add on to that, I mean, I think one of the things that's part of the trouble that we've found with working with people who have never worked in government context before, is that there is so much complexity surrounding even what looks like a small or isolated issue. And so for a lot of people that we've worked with before, it can be really frustrating to encounter a lot of other moving parts that were sort of made, decisions that were made long ago by very smart people working under like enormous constraints. And so I think understanding those complexities and being creative about working within them has been a really big challenge, and one that we can talk through a little bit in the workshop as well about how to make sure you're accounting for a lot of that complexity up front and not pretending like you live in a world where you can sort of have an innovation lab and create things that sort of like just work in a bubble.
So investing in the people and the processes to sustain the work. I think that a lot of the Red Hat session before this covered my sentiments about it quite well. It's like we really have to make sure that we are bringing in people with huge hearts and huge brains and open to new processes, open to shifting and ambiguous terrain. And I mean, hiring is one of the hardest things in government, so that would be another talk.
Yeah, I would just add though too, I feel like bringing in new talent in government is challenging, and often you're constrained with like position descriptions and stuff like that. But I think one of the really important things that we've both learned is how talented the people already are in existing positions and need, permission to sort of work in a different kind of way. And so a lot of the progress that we've both made in different contexts has been empowering other people in, Patty and registry to be able to sort of bring birth certificates online and things like that, and has really been that sort of enabling force rather than, here, let me do this for you. It's really been about, here are some tools you can use to sort of make the change that needs to happen. Oh yeah, this one is, again, the Red Hat Jim hit it well. We have this like diagram that's like an iceberg where technology is the little piece you see at the top, and underneath are all the things like culture and people and processes that are sort of rooted and are sort of driving a lot of it's sort of like IT problems are sometimes the symptom of a lot of those other issues rather than sort of the cause. And so if you're just going at this as sort of, this is an IT problem we need to fix, oftentimes it might be a temporary solution or not a solution at all.
Yes, some is better than none. I mean, I think there's a tendency in risk-averse cultures to be pretty binary about the paths forward, right? So like you take government, you say, we can't ship the whole website, so let's just keep it until it's done, or let's buy the whole thing from someone off the shelf. And I think a lot of times when you take this iterative approach where you accept that a lot of the things around you are changing or less than certain, you realize that you should just get something out as soon as you can and move forward in the way that makes sense from there. It's a lot easier to say that than it is to do that, but it's amazing how much more likely you are to be successful if you actually just take it one step at a time.
Yeah, and I think to that point too, I mean, in the workshop we'll talk a little bit about this, like strategies for doing things like discovery on any sort of project. I say jokingly sometimes, but I'm not joking when I say this, that like, I've brought this into like personal life too. So like a lot of these sorts of ideas about like understanding a process that someone's going through can be really effective, sort of like across context. And so it doesn't have to be some sort of super well-defined formal thing, better understanding a problem, talking to users. These are all things that, we can sort of incorporate into different problems that we're trying to solve and get better at addressing them, even if it's not in a formal sort of setting.
We have two more. The work is hard and you're never done. We'll just go through them together since I've revealed them already. So, I think that's another thing is like this work is incredibly hard. So patting yourself on the back is a way that I've gotten through it. Like understanding that you may have to reset. Like if you're comparing yourself to private sector, the increment of change may be different, right? Like I was amazed at how slow it was for me to get access to tools when I first onboarded at the VA, but then I'm still amazed at how we managed to replace va.gov in less than 4 years. I think that, or 3 years. I think that if you'd said we were gonna do that, I would have said, no way that's possible. But if you said it was gonna take me 11 months to make my first code commit, like I would have run screaming. So like both of those things are true, and that's just how government goes.
Yeah, no, and I think that Emily's right with like patting yourself on the back. I feel like we're like standing up here, but we're like coming from these seats, and in any other context would be sitting along with you. We've sort of been through this. We know we don't need to tell you this is hard, or that you're never done. So hats off to all of you.
So our workshop is after this, and then I guess we could take questions?
Yes.
Yeah. If anyone has questions.
For your VA example, on the crazy diagram that you have of all the systems, when you guys did a lot of that work, did you actually overhaul some of the systems, or was it just more of the interface to pull from that?
Yes. Caveat. So one of our other objectives, along with the unified digital experience, was to bring the claims process down double digits, like to make it faster, like at least 20% faster to get through the claim. Turns out that was kind of not the right goal. And also, the claims process was a pretty contentious issue when we got there because, the VSRs, like the person I showed you with all the arrows, that person had been working overtime for mandatory overtime for the last 6 months or something, all of them. And and they were in the news frequently for just, dropping veterans, dropping files, dropping whatever. And so when we showed up and said, we're going to fix the claims process, that was not popular at the time. They were sort of like, why don't you go show us that you know how to do anything at all, and then we'll let you touch this hot potato. So what we actually did in that instance was to revamp the appeals process, which was a mini version of claims that happened after your claim was denied. So we felt like that was a much safer place to rebuild something. The actual appeals wait time was significantly longer than the claims wait time, and those cases were often a lot more weighty because those were the harder ones to process in the first place. So we started on the appeals process because it felt like that was where we could actually make progress, and they have completely revamped and replaced that system with a new one. There's been a lot of administration change over the last 4 years, so I can't promise what's going to happen to that big system, but the plan was to then use the learnings from replacing the appeals process to replace the bigger VBMS system. It is incredibly complicated. I'm not saying that system should be significantly simpler. I hope it can. Yeah.
With the Department of Military and Veteran Affairs, PIO, do you have any APIs that we perhaps might be able to into?
Probably. Yeah. So I don't have the most up-to-date information because I am not still employed at the Department of Veterans Affairs. But the team has really focused on being API first. So there is a developer portal you can go to now, and you can use these APIs. Like, one of the things that we pushed for was, like, I was talking last night about, we basically had like LinkedIn for veterans that the VA built. So it was just like a less good version of LinkedIn. We were like, well, there's a lot of great tools out there. What if we just made an API so you could, ping the VA to find out if this person is a veteran, in fact, and then you can list them on LinkedIn as a verified veteran, for example. I know that's happened, and I think many other things have happened as well to make it so the VA builds less stuff and the bigger world builds more stuff, and they can kind of change and move more quickly. I can send you links for the developer portal too if you can't find it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So where do you see website development going? We're just, I built the boxes, so I don't know how innovative it is, but thinking of things like whether it's artificial intelligence, being able to be more adaptive to user, so delivering the content that they're, you got one person who's only looking for this versus thousands that may be looking for this. Instead of kind of going through those case studies, thinking about it and something that's static, how adaptive do you see that going forward?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a...
Question for folks in the back, if you don't mind.
Oh, yeah, so the question was about like where we see web development going in the future, and as there are technology or how there are changing demands for things to be more adaptive. How do you think about building websites, I guess, in that type of environment? Does that feel like a fair?
And actually leveraging some artificial intelligence so that whatever people are really wanting, that's forefront.
Yeah. And how do you use sort of artificial intelligence to sort of be more predictive for what people are the problems they're trying to solve by being on your website? One of the first things that was very important for me was when we went into the Boston.gov redesign. The last time that website had been redesigned was in 2006. So you can imagine the team. I tried to imagine the team there going through this massive overhaul. I think they spent 2 years on it, a lot of money. They launched the website, and then the next year the iPhone comes out. And so, of course, this website's not mobile responsive. Like, that was not a thing when they built the website. And the lesson I learned from that was we can have expectations for where the future might go, but what we need to be doing is building in a way that is adaptable. so that as needs change and as, Jim mentioned, like being Ford and all of a sudden like Uber comes out of nowhere, and really orthogonal to the way you run your business. I think for me, the most important thing was thinking about a platform and an internal team that would be able to sort of adapt as people's needs change and as sort of the technology landscape changes. We started doing a lot of things by incorporating actually artificial intelligence into some of the work we were doing. So a good example is, I don't know if they have 311 in Raleigh. 311 is basically a number you can call in a lot of cities to report things like potholes or graffiti, and so a lot of basic city services. And so the way that you sort of like fill in a case is you have to like go through this manual, a menu of 5,000 different items that you're reporting on and stuff like that. And instead what we said was, let's look at all the cases, all the just manual text that people had written down and all the cases for the last 3 years and see what case type went with that. And we can basically make predictions off of the things people are saying and like sort of auto-select instead of having them go through a manual menu of 5,000 things. So as you type in, what your problem is, if you use words like, broken or street, it starts sort of filtering the menu for things, auto-completing what you might be wanting to do. So there are some simple things, but the only reason why we can do things like that is because we selected a web platform, Drupal, that allowed us to work on open source technology that was constantly adapting as people's needs change. And that's why we made that sort of decision in the beginning, was because we knew we don't know what the future is going to hold, but this is our best shot at leveraging future technology. Is not picking like the most like modern technology, but the one that is sort of being supported by the biggest ecosystem of developers to see that sort of change happen iteratively. So that was a long answer.
No, it's good. I just want to pile on that a lot of the time when you look at the things that you go to for your city or your state or your, federal government agency, and you say you boil it down to like the top 100 things that people do when they go to that website, it's really like most of it is covered in the first 10. And then everything after that is sort of like diminishing returns. Like you have to make it so people can find their own content, but I'm always amazed at how much less things they actually come to do than I thought. Like I would think they come to do everything, and then you make a list and you're like, oh, that about sums it up. Like, they need to renew their driver's license. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, sorry, just keep going. Is that what I sort of found is that there was a tendency to sort of shape the user experience by the way we're organized internally, which is so often the case. So a perfect example was wanting to create a mobile app for what we call like the circle of life certificate. So birth certificates, marriage certificates, death certificates. But when you look at it from a user's perspective, you're not usually like getting married and having a baby at the same time. There's no bundling benefits of sort of like having a mobile app for all those things. And in fact, it's not even usually, your end constituents that are getting things like death certificates. It's funeral homes who are dealing with a lot of other things at the same time. And so really that perspective of coming from the user's end and understanding the full spectrum of things that they have, like your LinkedIn example is great. If that's where veterans are going for jobs, then it's certainly better to be where they are and find out where they are and meet them there than trying to sort of create more sort of like a bigger, more robust mobile app or sort of platform for government. Any other questions?
All right.
Cool. And again, we're doing the workshop. So if you want to like go through this with us and sort of like put this into practice a little bit, come join us back there.
Thank you.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
These are smart ones.
Hey guys, are you having fun? It's been a great event so far, right? Let's give one more round of applause for Emily and Lauren. This is wireless, so I can walk a little closer here. Yeah, so from here, we're going to move to the Eye Center. We've got snacks and food, drinks along the way, so be sure to grab something. I understand the drone is here, so we're going to learn about the broadband initiative in the state, the DEQ drones pilot, web accessibility, and more. And of course, just a couple minutes, around 11:15, something like that, please join Emily and Lauren for the Discovery Sprints workshop, and this is going to be more hands-on. So we're thrilled that you're here. Let's keep this going. It's been a great morning so far, and we'll see you back at the Eye Center here in just a moment.